How's it going, guys? So I thought I did a review of my Honda NC700X, but it turned out I never did a proper one to look over the bike in detail and then give you guys my opinion on this motorcycle. Okay, so if you're interested in anything else, riding videos of the NC700X, definitely check out my channel and my playlist for motorcycle. Otherwise, this video we just gonna quickly talk about the NC700X. This is a year 2012 model, and I bought this bike not that long ago actually, because back then I was still commuting in the city, in rush hour traffic in the morning and on the way back home. Back then I had a lot of other options. I had a couple different scooters that I tried. I have my F800R, which I still own, and that's gonna be my permanent bike to stay. And I also had some other bikes that I've ridden in the past, but the NC700X definitely stand out in the bike that I've ridden, in the bikes that I've ridden, as the best city commuting motorcycle, and for quite a few reasons. And the first being that it's able to actually store my full face helmet in this super unique front trunk space. Okay, full size helmet for my riding. Every time I get to work, I literally just drop my helmet here and take my backpack, which is usually on my back if I don't take any kind of luggage options with me on this bike. And if I have my luggage option, my backpack usually just sits right in there. Okay, and this is the first thing that stands out, is the massive front storage space. The second thing that stands out with me is the engine design. This engine is literally optimized for city use in stop and go traffic. The gearing is actually very high, so you can comfortably commute on this bike with probably just the first 2 or 3 gears if you need it. Okay, you don't have to shift your gear as often as, say, compared to my F800R. I have to literally shift my gears every step of the way, stop and go in the traffic, which is not fun. And the clutch on this bike is also very light, so it's very easy to shift those high gears as well. The gearbox is not as clunky as my F800R, so the gearbox is rather smooth, and all those factors combined makes this bike just my preferred choice when I go ride to work. Back then, when I still need to go ride to work every day, for the most part I'm gonna be picking my NC700X. Okay, yeah, it's just after you ride a lot of bikes, you kind of know which bike is going to be great for which application. And I think in my scenario, the NC700X stands out as the best city commuting bike. Now, I didn't talk about highway commuting. That's because my commuting is mostly on the city streets, but I did have to ride this bike back on the highway when I first bought it. Okay, so maybe 20 miles on the highway. And what surprised me is that how less vibey this bike compared to other parallel twin, which is my F800R. Okay, another parallel twin. This bike at 80 miles per hour going on the highway, I cannot feel any kind of significant vibration. Now, if I'm on my F800R at 80 miles per hour, that vibration through my arms is already, you know, making me hate riding that bike on the highway, which I still do. And again, my commute or my joyride doesn't involve a lot of highway riding, so this is going to be pertaining mostly for the city riding. Now this bike, back to when I rode it on the highway, 80 miles per hour, no vibration can be felt. So in terms of vibration control on this engine, pretty amazing. Okay, it's not a high revving engine. I think that red lines at 6200 RPM. It's a red line. This is a parallel twin. Again, high gearing, most of the torque that's going to be usable is going to be down low. So the moment from you twist the throttle, the bike will propel you very nicely, okay? Now, I think the only downside I want to talk about with this bike, or two downsides, okay? Personally, I think that might hinder you from liking this bike if you're not very tall, okay? For me, I'm 5'7". If you're not very tall and you sit on this bike, you're gonna feel like this bike is it's like an adventure bike setup. It's rather tall, over 32 inches of ground of seat height. For me, I feel like I have to like have both my feet, you know, I need to tiptoe my feet to be able to stand on this bike at stop and go traffic. I can't have both foot on the ground very comfortably. That's the first thing. If you're not tall, if you're shorter than 5'7", I think this bike is going to be quite a lot for you to handle during the stoplight. I mean, alternatively, you could have just 1 foot down at a stoplight, and that will, you know, ensure you have the bike very stable in your control with just 1 foot down. But personally, I think if you're a rather new rider, you don't want to get this bike for stop and go traffic, okay? Especially if you need to stop quite a lot and you're short. Your foot on the ground is going to be quite often, and you're not going to like this bike. If you're taller than 5'8", I think this bike is not going to be a trouble for you, and this is not going to be a concern. The second grip I have for the NC700X is the brake. Despite having a rather large single disc in the front, the braking power is uninspiring, let's just say that. So if you have to stop from a rather higher speed, this brake will make you stop, but it's not gonna make you stop fast. And this is one of the weaker brakes that I've tried in all the bikes that I've owned, okay? It just doesn't stop as fast as I want. Now, I've ridden the CTX 700 DCT model, which had an ABS brake. Surprisingly, that brake actually works quite a lot better, at least twice as better as this non-ABS version from the Nissan. Okay, so surprisingly, if you have a DCT model, you're going to be enjoying that DCT model quite a lot. You don't have to worry about shifting, okay, and it's going to work even better for the city commuting. Now, for the non-DCT model, if you're buying a manual, okay, the brakes is one thing that I do not like. It just doesn't give you a lot of confidence in terms of braking. That's about the only two downsides that I can think of for this bike, okay. The other things that I want to talk about is if you're buying a used NC700X, you definitely want to check the condition of a few areas, okay. The first thing you want to check is how good the seat is. Now, the front seat on this bike is actually a customized seat. This is from Seat Concept. This is their grip seat. Very grippy, very comfortable to sit on. When I bought the bike, it came with this seat. So again, I'm not complaining about this. The back seat, you can see here, it looks rather new, right? So I literally just re-upholstered this back seat. And one of the common failure point for those NC700X is the vinyl seat that they used for this is very thin. It's like the same thickness of the vinyl that I use here. They probably gonna last you for about, I would say 6-7 years before they're gonna start aging. They're gonna start cracking. The original seat on here cracked like so bad, and it was very ugly. The previous owner put a cover on there to just hide it, but I decided to just do a rewrap of the seat, and as you can see, it actually did a nice job making this look newer, okay. It's very easy to rewrap the seat, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're buying a used unit, most likely the seat is going to be deteriorated and you're going to have some rip and cracks on the seat. You might have to rewrap. Another thing common with those Honda motorcycles, and especially the kind of lower end Hondas, is a lot of parts you're gonna see pitting and rusting. Okay, right now I try to protect it the best I can by just wiping the entire bike with a nice thin coat of engine oil. It was the 10W30 engine oil that I used to change my car. I have some extra engine oil laying around, and I just coated everything, which you can see it actually prevents the bike from getting further rusted in the weather. The previous owner obviously did not coat the engine or protect any of those parts, so they do have some surface rust, and it's very common for those bikes to have surface rust. Does that affect the actual use? Not at all. You're gonna see those bikes, if you're buying a used one, you're gonna see a lot of surface rust, but they are not gonna affect the actual use of the bike and the longevity of the bike at all. Okay, there are some pitting over here from the paint. Again, if you leave this bike in the rain, they will get rusted. They will get surface rust quite a lot. Okay, so that's one thing that's very common, very common for the Honda NC700X. This is also super common. Every NC700X you're gonna see, whether the owner takes care of it or not, it's gonna have surface rust over here on the clutch joint. Okay, every bike is gonna have rust over here. Does not affect use at all, but in terms of aesthetics on those budget builds, budget conscious motorcycles, that's what you're gonna expect is surface rust. All right, options for those bikes are plenty. For this bike that I bought, it had a nice rack, and it has a nice Tusk full aluminum panniers, the side luggage options on here. So if you want to customize this bike and have loads of storage options, it's definitely able, it will give you the option to do that. So I think all in all, with the side pannier, with the Honda factory trunk on the back, with the front space, I have about 140 liters of storage space. Okay, so if you do travel a lot, if you do long touring, this bike is more than capable to get you there very energy efficiently as well. Okay, so the mileage I get on this bike on the highway is about 70. In the city, maybe about 60 to 65. Still, it's amazing mileage. It actually gets better mileage than my scooters, my 150cc scooter. It doesn't get as good mileage compared to my Honda Froza 300 scooter that I've had in the past. That one, it's like one step above it in terms of mileage, but it doesn't get the fun that the NC700X gets you in the city, and also during the long highway touring. Okay, I have this bike listed on the motorcycle rental site. I actually had my first rental. Some renters came over, and he rented this bike to ride from Miami to Key West. Okay, so that's a 4-hour ride. He rode this bike all the way with full luggage option and back in a 4-day trip, and he told me it was very nice, and he enjoyed riding this bike for that long touring on the US 1 highway. Okay, so in terms of capability, again, based on that rider's riding, I can tell you it's going to be great for highway touring as well. It's not going to be as powerful, but it's going to be very energy efficient, and it's going to get you there trouble-free. Okay, trouble-free. If you're touring on the highway, I would suggest a more robust and more taller windscreen, which you can probably get for cheap, and just mount it directly on this this windscreen mounting point. That's gonna block a lot of wind. But for my city commuting, I did not have a full highway windshield because I need that airflow, because Miami is rather hot. If you have a tall windscreen, it's gonna block a lot of airflow. Okay, so depending on your use, you can fully customize this bike. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is taking this bike on a adventure tour where there's going to be gravel, where there's going to be off-road riding, because the suspension in the bike is just not designed for off-road. It's super soft, and with that preload on the rear, you're gonna expect this thing to bottom out quite often. Okay, so I do know there are aftermarket options if you want to use this bike and get it a better suspension, you might be able to do that with a Aprilia suspension. And I think you can get those Aprilia suspension on eBay for that are cheap, probably like around less than $200. You can get a rear suspension and just do a very easy to do suspension replacement job on the rear shock. I actually have a video on how to replace the rear shock on this bike. It's very easy to do. Just a couple bolts to loosen on the axle joint, and you're able to actually get the suspension replaced. So if you do want to think about getting a better suspension, there is your option right there. Okay, in terms of maintenance, again, it's a Honda. Everything is easy to take off, and every fluid is easy to do, and everything that you can think of for replacement part is not gonna be expensive at all. Okay, one last thing is that I want to say is probably the most common fail point on this bike is gonna be the this OEM shock seal, dust seal. The dust seal actually goes bad rather often and rather common, so definitely have OEM seals ready. Once you start noticing the cracking, it's gonna leak the fluid for sure. So that's my last thing that I want to mention. Other than that, it's gonna be a very reliable bike to have. Okay, and I guess the last thing I'm gonna do is probably just to turn on the bike and have you hear about the engine sound with the custom exhaust. Okay. So this Delcavic custom exhaust, it's fitted for NC700X, and it's stainless steel, and it's very affordable, and it actually makes the sound of this bike just quite a lot nicer. It gives a low-end rumble, and it's not obnoxiously loud, which I really like. If you wanted to go louder, you do have the option to remove that baffle inside, okay? And then you could have a slightly louder exhaust. But the engine sounds like a tractor, super reliable, and I have no complaint about the mechanical part of this bike. It simply works, and it's a great city commuter, and it's also great fuel efficient highway tour, with the fact that the engine just doesn't vibrate as bad at highway speeds compared to a lot of other parallel tweaks. All right. Again, very nice bike. Very enjoyable ride. So here's my, take, review, opinion on the NC700X. And the reason I'm doing this review is because as I said, I stopped commuting. I found a full-time remote work, so I don't need to ride this bike anymore in the city. And I want to just be able to keep one bike to have fun, which is my F800R. And this bike, again, if you need a bike that's reliable, that's fun to commute on, this is definitely the best option in my opinion. All right, so thanks again guys for watching, and hit like button and subscribe to my channel for more motorcycle related stuff. Otherwise, safe riding out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.